Hey everyone, so today I am doing some stenciling for my Paint Your Own cookies. If you're not familiar with what a Paint Your Own cookie is, you can go and check out on my blog. The image that I am using here is just this Christmas tree, and the whole point of a Paint Your Own cookie is that you have the image and then you're going to have some paint dots over here so that the person can actually take a wet paintbrush, take the coloring off of the side here and use that to paint their cookie before they eat it. It's really popular with kids and for party favors and holidays, and I'm doing a lot of these for Christmas. So you're probably wondering why we use icing to scrape over top of the stencil when you could just simply airbrush it. The reason for that is that if you airbrush the image, when the person goes to paint it, it's going to smear. So you want to use a really thick consistency icing. This is the consistency that I'm using here. It's a little bit thicker than my traditional piping icing that I use. You just want to make sure that when you are stenciling your image that it's not going to run underneath your image, because you want to have a crisp line. So you're going to go over here and stencil. You're going to center your image here. You can also use a stencil holder. It just so happens that for this cookie it's a little bit thicker and kind of the wrong size to fit into the square holder. But if you're looking for a good stencil holder, I recommend the Creative Cookie holder. So for this one, I'm just going to hold the stencil down like this, and I'm going to scrape above. Now it's really important when you're scraping that you are doing just what I said and scraping above the image and ensuring that your icing is not being somehow pushed underneath, because that's going to blur your lines and you're not going to have those crisp, nice ones. And I'm just going to scrape off the excess icing as I go. And that's a good layer there. So you just want to make sure that you've got all your lines and you're not missing any. Then what's super important is when you go to take the stencil off, you want to make sure that you're not pulling to the side, above, below. You want to lift directly up, just like that, and then you have that nice, clean, crisp line. So I can use my stencil here usually around 6 or 10 times before I need to rinse it off. You want to make sure that you don't get too much buildup on there, or you're going to get a blurry image. So again, scraping right over top. Scrape off the excess as you go. All right, and lift up. Now you can see I got a couple of areas here, and I'll usually just take my scribe and kind of get them off, and no one's really gonna notice that. And again, you wanna make sure that your cookie is fully dry. That's super important. So a fully dry cookie is usually one that's been drying for 8 to 10 hours, I'd say. Also, sorry, I'm just getting my next cookie ready here. So fully dry, like I said, and then you want to let these dry for about, not long, like 15 minutes. It doesn't take too long. And then you're going to go on to do your colors on the side. And then I'll show you as well how I do those. All right, so I'm ready to do the paint dots here for these edible paint cookies, and I'm gonna do it a little bit differently this time because traditional paint palette cookies use an airbrush. You can do paint dots with royal icing transfers that you would glue onto here with more royal icing, or you can just airbrush the color onto it. But I wanna do something so that the average person can make these who doesn't own an airbrush machine. So for this, I'm using airbrush colors, liquid airbrush colors here. Any brand is good. These are Miracolor and they are awesome. And I've taken those and I've put them into this paint palette here. I've got these circle sponges, and all I'm gonna do is I'm going to dip it in to the airbrush color. I'm gonna kind of get off any excess here onto a paper towel. And I'm gonna go through and just put these dots on. So there are other ways of doing this if you like a cleaner look, but I mean, these are paint cookies for kids, so really, and these look like actual paint dots. So you can go through and do it this way, and this way you don't need any special equipment. And these little sponges here are super cheap. They're just from the dollar store and they work awesome. So just go back and you're gonna have a little bit of buildup here and just kind of make sure that it's even on there. And you would go through and do this with as many colors as you want. I'm using 4 colors and I'm just going down that way with them. And then when the person wants to paint this cookie, they're gonna wet a paintbrush. This will be dry. And when they activate it with the water, the paint's gonna go onto their cookie and they can paint their tree. So again, there are other ways of doing this and I list those on my blog. I'm newer at doing it this way, but I have to say it is such a time saver when you're doing large quantities, and it does the trick perfectly. And you do actually get a decent amount of color on here. I kind of put it on, I let it sit, and then I go back over and just kind of even it out. But I do also list on my blog how to make royal icing transfers that you airbrush and then you place them on here, and it gives it more of a raised paint palette-y, if that's a word, look. And you can also take cookies and just airbrush color right onto them. But again, I wanted to show a way that just the average person could make a paint your own cookie for their kids or party, whatever it is, because they are an awesome little treat and they're always a big hit. All right, so these are all done. As you can see, they are still wet, so I'm just gonna wait for these to fully dry, probably about 20 minutes. And then I'm gonna do the last step, which is to apply a light layer of cornstarch. The reason for that is that these airbrush colors have a tendency to become sticky again when they are packaged, and putting the cornstarch onto them helps to act as an absorbent, and it eliminates that from happening. So all you would do with the cornstarch is just tap it on and then kind of brush it off lightly. It's not going to smudge this or anything, so you don't have to worry about that. And once these are fully done, they are going to get packaged with a little paintbrush and then we'll be good to go. So again, you can find a full tutorial for paint your own cookies on my blog. I will go back in and add this option for the paint, and I will have the full version of this up on my YouTube channel and the Instagram channel for you guys to refer to later on if you need.